And you're watching News Central TV. My name is Mazino Apil. Just on your TVs, just now in a diplomatic engagement, Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, in South Africa on a courtesy call to South Africa's Ministry of International Relations and Cooperation, Mr. Ronald Lamola. The high-level meeting comes at a critical moment as both leaders look to deepen collaboration and also align with visions on key global issues. We'll continue to bring you updates on the happenings in South Africa regarding this. But once again, this is News Central TV, and let's get on with the news for the 3 o'clock hour. And you're welcome. The top stories this hour. President Bola Tinubu hosts German President Steinmeier in Abuja. And Senate President Ahmed declares Ekpolo, Senate seat vacant, asks INEC to conduct election. And also coming up, dozens of Ghana's president-elect's supporters arrested in post-poll chaos. Details coming up now. Welcome and good afternoon. Our News Central now at this hour begins in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, where President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is hosting German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier, who is on a 3-day state visit to Nigeria. Now, Steinmeier arrived at the State House in Abuja and was welcomed with full honors, including national anthem, a 21-gun salute, and an inspection of the Guard of Honor. The German leader will also meet with ECOWAS Commission President Dr. Alieu Omar Touray before heading to Lagos. In Lagos, he plans to visit a startup hub, engage with business leaders, and connect with cultural figures like Dr. Okundaye and also Nobel Laureate, Professor Wole Soyinka. The visit underscores strong Nigeria-Germany relations following recent exchanges between leaders of both nations. And away from that, we head to Kano, where the Nigeria police force says its operatives have seized fake currencies worth 129 billion naira. Addressing journalists on Tuesday, Muyiwa Adejobi, force spokesperson, said 3 suspects were arrested in connection with the fake currencies. Adejobi identified the suspects as Noura Ibrahim, Mohammed Muntari, and also Usman Abdullahi. A breakdown of the recovery shows a total of 3,366,000 in counterfeit US dollars, 51,970 in counterfeit CFA francs, and also 1,443,000 in counterfeit naira. In a related development, Adejobi said police operators also arrested 3 suspected gun runners along the Kaduna-Kano Expressway.
There was a football match in Sani Abacha Stadium. And after the match, there was clashes among the youth of Kofar Mata and Zage quarters and neighboring areas. This fight is not directly linked with Daba, but a rivalry between these groups, which led to the deaths of 2. Whereas there was resurfacing of fights as a result of these deaths of these 2 from one side, which as a result, a large number of these youth turn out for reprisal attack. The command immediately mobilized teams of policemen to the scene, and of course, the Commissioner of Police of the state, CP Salman Dogo Garba, was at the scene on assessment. And after assessing the situation, adequate security deployments were done to about any future occurrence, as well as continuous engagements with stakeholders. The engagement started yesterday with meeting with all the stakeholders of Kofar Mata, and it continues today. We are in all effort trying to make the state very peaceful, and this killing will not be left unturned. The perpetrators will be arrested.
And now in battle, human rights lawyer Dele Farotimi's request to enjoy early bail was dashed on Tuesday as an Ekiti magistrate shifted hearing in the application until December 20. Farotimi is standing trial on an amended 14-count defamation suit brought before the court by a senior advocate of Nigeria, Afe Babalola. Meanwhile, Dele Farotimi pleaded not guilty to the charges. News Central's Ibalani Amoni has the report.
Farotimi was brought to the magistrate court on Tuesday morning by operatives of the Rapid Response Squad of the Nigerian Police and officials of the Nigerian Correctional Service. The human rights lawyer Dele Farotimi pleaded not guilty to the amended 14 charges leveled against him. The charges stem from a defamation suit filed by Afe Babalola SAN over allegations made in Farotimi's book, Nigeria and its Criminal Justice System. The court's proceedings were marked by a dramatic turn of events, including a legal showdown between counsel to Afe Babalola, Taiwo Adeniyi, and Farotimi's counsel Adeyinka Olumide Fusika, a senior advocate of Nigeria. Latter's appearance was initially objected to by the prosecuting team, citing rules that prohibit senior advocates of Nigeria from appearing in magistrate courts. Despite the objections, the court allowed the proceedings to continue. Farotimi's defense team submitted a preliminary objection, urging the court to dismiss the suit on grounds that a charge is legally invalid and non-existent. The court has reserved its ruling and adjourned the bail application to Friday, December 20, 2024. This means Farotimi will remain in custody for another 10 days, sparking widespread concern and call for his release.
Has already made a pronouncement of bail. It is expected that that particular bail should have been granted to him at the magistrate court. This was actually what His Excellency Peter Gregory Obi, who was exploring all options to make sure that this particular case has been put to rest. You remember that he tried as much as possible to reach out to major persons than to be given this particular bail, so that the issues can be trashed in the position of court later. As Democrats and respecters of the law, we will respect the position of the case and at the same time present ourselves in the court of law at the next proceedings. But it is expected that this particular case is a bailable offense, especially in the magistrate court, so that we can be given a bail, so that we will not escalate this particular matter unnecessarily.
Thereafter, a mild drama ensued between the supporters of Afe Babalola and Dele Farotimi outside the court.
On behalf of myself, I'm speaking as a citizen of this Ekiti Township, all right, as an indigenous of this community. Nobody can destabilize the peace of our state. We know they are rented talks. We know they are hired to do this. But no amount of street wailing, no amount of internet attack can make a group of underdogs to subdue the right of our father.
In a country where there is law and order, all the things that were written in the book by Mr. Dele Farotimi are the things that are playing out in this course. I've been here personally. I was here when another charge was served, again in the prison, and again and again and again. Nobody is above the law. If this is a civil case, why is it happening like this? Why is this happening? You are telling us that the government is under one man, which is the same man that is in question. And you're saying that the same book we are condemning now, and the things here, what is happening in this court? I listen to both parties, and it is not justifiable that something like this happened in the world, under the watch of Nigerians. This is going to create a revolution, and we're not going to sit back around it.
The original charge was amended, and the new charge was read to the defendant. And thereafter, the application for bail was argued. So, and the ruling adjourned to 28th of December this year. So that is the proceeding in the court today in summary.
The case has sparked widespread interest, with many Nigerians closely following the development. In Ado-Ekiti, Ekiti State, for News Central, I am Igbalani Omoni.
A Federal Capital Territory High Court in Abuja has ordered the remand of former Kogi State Governor Yahaya Bello at the Kuje Correctional Center over allegations of 110 billion naira fraud. Justice Marianne Anene denied Mr. Bello's bail request, ruling it premature and incompetent, as the application was filed before his arrest. Bello was initially held by the EFCC but will now remain in Kuje unit until his trial begins on January 29, 2025. Meanwhile, his co-defendants Umar Oricha and Abdusalam Hudu were granted bail of 300 million naira each, with 2 sureties. The court also scheduled February 25 and 27 for the continuation of the trial. And now to discuss this, we're joined by a public affairs analyst, Justice Ojeno. Justice, good afternoon and welcome once again here on The News. Now, let's start by asking what the legal implications of the court ruling that Yahya Bello's bail application was prematurely incompetent. Since you're a lawyer, I mean, hey, let's understand this, prematurely incompetent.
Okay, what the court, in coming to that ruling, the consideration of the court was that he filed it before a charge was read to him. Because in law, especially in criminal procedure, a case only commences once the charge is read to the criminal defendant. And it is now for either the lawyer to the criminal defendant to jump in and say he's objecting to the charge before the criminal defendant pleads one way or the other, meaning whether he's guilty or not. So the court in this situation said that that he filed it way before the commencement of the criminal proceedings, and because of that, it is incompetent. It is for the lawyer, to Mr. Yahya Bello, to either agree with that ruling of the court or to appeal the ruling of the court. But in exploring one of these two, he also has an additional option of filing a fresh bail application. So it's any of the three options. So once it decides on any of the three, I most likely actually think that it's going to be the third one, which is filing a fresh bail application, because they will not want to score a victory, an egotistic victory, by saying that, okay, he wants to insist on his own stance, which is that the justice of the High Court was wrong in coming to the decision of overruling their bail application.
Justice, this has gone on for so long, and from the visuals that we can see even on the TV, people are beginning to ask questions regarding the way this situation has been handled. So how could the remand of a former governor of such significant fraud charges affect public perception of governance and also anti-corruption efforts in Nigeria?
Okay, for me, I actually think that the EFCC goofed in not arraigning him before now, whether it's by hook or by crook. They ought to have shown that the Nigerian state actually has law enforcement powers. They have a teeth to bite. So they ought to have arraigned him significantly earlier before now. So when you say that the case has gone on for so long, that's what delayed it. Because in criminal law, we can actually say that his case started not too long ago when the court decided to try him in absentia. And but for that, I think that significantly the case ought to have gone a long way, because if we observe now with respect to this 110 billion charge, the court has actually reserved 4 dates, 2 dates in January and 2 dates in February, in order to see how far the hearing of the cases can go. So long as I'm concerned, the judiciary, with everything that has been presented to me, has not been complicit in any way in prolonging this case. It is usually the usual suspects, which is the prosecution or the investigating parties or the law enforcement agencies, that have allowed this matter to drag for this long. And the perception of the people usually would now be as though I'm reminded by the book of Eric Blair, more popularly known as George Orwell, when he says that all animals are equal, but some are more equal than the others. And that seems to be what is at play here, when the law suddenly has been changed, when all the animal initially thought that all animals were equal, but suddenly a variation has been added to it to mean that some are more equal than the others. And I think that is what is happening now with respect to the way Mr. Yahya Bello's case has been handled, and unfortunately so.
That was the third book I read my entire life. Thank you for quoting Animal Farm. But then again, I see you trying to justify the judiciary here, saying it might just be the investigative unit that are making this a deal such a hard one. But let's talk about the co-defendants. Now, this is the judiciary. They've let the co-defendants go on bail, and they've said, hey, Bello cannot. So why? What gives here?
Okay, for me, I actually think that it is very, very possible that after the charge was read, that bail application was filed by the lawyers to the co-defendant. But even in the absence of a formal bail application being filed, I know of the authority of Abiola and Federal Republic of Nigeria. And in that case, the court actually stated that even in a court of record, a lawyer can make an oral application for bail of a defendant. And it is the discretion of the court to choose whether one particular defendant should be granted bail and another should not be granted bail. I'm holding myself from going into the merits of the case. So you and I can actually conjecture, give a conjecture one way or the other, why Mr. Yahaya Bello wasn't granted bail, whilst the others were granted bail. But I know that for a fact, whether or not formal bail applications were filed for the other two defendants, for his co-defendants, it is very, very obvious in law that there is a place in law for after their pleas have been taken, for their lawyers to have applied orally to the court and for the court to consider and grant it. It is all at the discretion of the court, and it is the court that knows what particularly weighed on its mind before it decided in that particular way. So we cannot say that because one defendant had a particular treatment and the other defendants didn't have that kind of treatment, that the court was biased. The court is a court, especially when it is when it's in bail matters. It's a court of discretion. It's a court of considerations.
All right, Justice, I'm going to ask this now real quick because we're almost out of time. But for a case that's taking so long, so many challenges, first off, to find the defendant was a problem, and then everything that's happened since after then. It's such a high-profile case. So the question is, what challenges would prosecution or defense actually find, as this has been postponed to 2025, early 2025? What challenges should they expect to, well, try to surmount?
Okay, for me, it's my prayer that they don't face any challenges. But the major challenge in high-profile cases is compromise of witnesses. And sometimes the compromise can be as a result of a lot of things going back, a lot of water passing under the bridge, or outright witness intimidation. So that's a serious challenge or a serious consideration. I'm very, very happy that the case has been given an early date in January or February, so that whatever it is that is in the recollection of the witnesses, which is sometimes a challenge too, can actually, may not be a big challenge in this case. The witnesses cannot, most likely will not be said to have forgotten their lines or to have had memory issues, memory challenges, and things like that. So the fact that it is short, the challenges are significantly reduced. I pray and I hope that as much as possible, the prosecution is not corrupted. Well, I know of Mr. Kemi Pinheiro, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, is a man of a great pedigree in the legal profession, and maybe all the other witnesses too. I just pray that nothing happens along the lines. I pray that there are no political negotiations. I pray that the Attorney General doesn't use his Section 174 powers to enter a null prosecute. And I also pray that in the event that there is a conviction, unlike the way the other two governors were granted a demoralizing you are free to go by the president of the time, I pray that this one too doesn't go that route, so that people, the Nigerian people, or even the people of the world, don't suffer a crisis of confidence when it comes to how we treat persons who are convicted of crimes and criminalities in our country.
Well, Justice, I want to say thank you, and I pray that your prayers are not just the legal kind, but also divine. Thank you very much, Justice.
Thank you.
Now let's go on a break, and when we get back, Nigerian Medical Association urges standardized pay to combat Japa syndrome. We'll be back. Welcome back. Now, members of the Southern Caucus in Nigeria's House of Representatives have expressed their support for the proposed tax reform bill, emphasizing their willingness to engage in dialogue to improve the nation's tax laws. Speaking with newsmen in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, the chairman of the caucus, Nicholas Mutu, says that their endorsement of the bill follows a thorough review of the proposed legislation and its expected positive impact on citizens.
The Southern Caucus in the House of Representatives have met and we welcome the bill, and that we are open to dialogue.
As we process it, inputs are made from our various states and constituencies. Some states have already received those inputs. And so we are in consonance with our constituents and the states that we represent. And so we are ready to work to ensure that we give a better tax law to Nigeria. That's what we are interested in. It's not to play to the gallery.
The 13% that is being gotten by all producing states started with 50%. Recently, we did the PIB. We had issue with the host community bill as well. So there's negotiation back and forth. At the end of the day, Nigerians will be better for it. Yes. Negotiation is an art. We'll sit down, go back and forth, exchange, make them see reason, we see reason, and we all ensure that this matter comes to a logical end that will be in the interest of the good people of Nigeria.
President Godswill Akpabio has declared the seat of Senator Monday Okpebholo, representing Edo Central Senatorial District, vacant. This comes as Senator Okpebholo bids farewell to the 10th Senate following his election as governor of Edo State. Akpabio also asked the Independent National Electoral Commission to conduct elections as soon as possible to fill the vacant seat. This move is aimed at ensuring that the people of Edo Central Senatorial District continue to have representation in the Senate. Nigeria's House of Representatives has instructed the Federal Capital Territory Police Command to suspend the enforcement of a ban on tinted glasses and covered number plates, plate numbers in Abuja, saying that motorists have not been given adequate notice to effect compliance. This follows a resolution passed by lawmakers after a motion of urgent public importance was raised on the floor of the House, where lawmakers sought an extension for car owners. The Nigerian Medical Association, the NMA, has called for a minimum remuneration benchmark for medical doctors to combat the Japa syndrome, the mass migration of health professionals seeking better opportunities abroad. Speaking after the National Health Summit and NEC meeting in Abuja, NMA President Professor Bola stressed the need for standardized pay, improved welfare, and workplace security to retain talent. The proposed benchmark aims to ensure fair pay across federal, state, and also private sectors, preventing internal brain drain where doctors leave underfunded local facilities for higher-paying jobs. The NMA also urged full implementation of the National Health Act, advocating for certificates of standards to enhance healthcare accountability and also public confidence. And to discuss this, we are joined by a public health physician, Dr. Rinette Awa. You're welcome, Mr. Awa, Dr. Awa rather. Thank you very much for joining us. So I'm going to go right straight to asking what the key challenge is driving the mass migration of Nigerian doctors and how effective could a standardized remuneration benchmark be in addressing these issues?
All right, thank you very much, and good day. Once again, thanks for having me. So just dive right in. So the migration issue of healthcare workers, I will not just base it or restrict it to just doctors. I'll look at it as healthcare workers in general. It's actually, we can approach it from the pull and the push factors, where push factors are those unfavorable conditions to the country that is prepared, pushing out our healthcare workers, to countries where the society or the healthcare system is better off. First of all, we have the push factors as insecurity, we have low remunerations, stable healthcare systems, poor working conditions of our hospitals generally. Then on the other hand, you have the two factors where beyond benefits, the other sides.
Dr. Awa, we're having problems with your audio. I'm going to request that you disconnect the earpiece. Perhaps maybe we'll be able to hear you better, if that is okay by you. I'll go right ahead and ask my next question. So, how might the proposed minimum pay standard impact healthcare delivery in underserved areas, such as rural and local government hospitals? Because I'm assuming that these people are perhaps maybe going to have equal pay, just like the people who are the doctors or medical staff who are in regular urbanized territories. So how might this help?
Oh, sorry, if I get your question, I'm not sure why I was disconnecting my earpiece then, but yes, you're asking how this minimum,
how the standardized
benchmark would affect retention in our local settings, especially at the private and state level, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so one, I think it's a step in the positive direction. It may not necessarily be the only strategy that may be needed, but I think it's going to be a pivotal step in helping in retention, especially as we all know that if our federal hospitals have or are benefiting more when it comes to resource allocations and all that. And when it comes to salary benchmarks, remuneration, and welfare packages generally, is tilted more in favor of the federal. But I think standardizing this pay across would, to an extent, create an equitable salary structure where even the state and private hospitals and healthcare workers can find reasons to want to work in those areas. So I think generally it's a step in the right direction, if you ask me.
Okay, and what other measures besides financial incentives could be implemented to retain the health professionals?
All right, great. So we also have other non-financial measures that we could benefit from, say things like health insurance. It will surprise you that a doctor now cannot really, let's assume a doctor falls in, he may not be able to take care of his health, charges and bills. So health insurance, would go a long way. We also could benefit from school fees subsidization for children and families. Those are small. So also benefit from transport allowance, and basically, I think this could go transport. We look at school fees, health insurance, the major incentive, and also hazard allowance, right? I think these are key measures. We are talking about short term for now.
Dr. Awo, can you confirm that you just said that even health workers actually face challenges when it comes to health insurance as well?
Yes, especially those in the rural and state. Most of them are not on good health insurance scheme. Some are not, especially those working in the private sector, right? It's very challenging, and we know out-of-pocket sorting of medical bills is not sustainable. It's, in fact, nobody can sort out healthcare, out of pocket. So I can tell you for a fact that most of the state, and private hospitals, healthcare workers do not have health insurance.
So in view of that, how significant is the partial enforcement of the National Health Act in undermining healthcare services? And also, what steps should the government prioritize to strengthen its implementation?
Okay, so I think just like every policy out there, the benefits, or how effective it is will boil down to implementation. So one problem we've always faced for a very long time, even in the country, is that there are a lot of policies, amazing policy, but when it comes to implementation, it's always a problem. Take, for instance, the Abuja 2015 declaration, where at least healthcare funding is supposed to receive minimum of 15% of the national and across board, even sub-national budget. But it will surprise you that till today, we've not been able to pass 5% across board. In fact, some states do less than 5%. So I think the policies are good, they are great, but implementation is always the issue. Even when it comes to the health insurance, I am aware of that policy, but how well has it been implemented over time? That's where the problem is. So I think it's not just enough to implement policies. We must have, the right step, political will, of the government to be able to see these policies to the latter. So
Dr.
that is...
Okay. All right, thank you very much. I was going to thank you, Dr. Awo, for giving us your expert opinion on the matter here. Thank you very much. And we'll continue to come to you as a resource for most of these conversations. Thank you very much. Coming up, Sudan's military accused of launching airstrikes on marketplace. We'll have the details for you when we get back. Welcome back. Let's take us to Ghana now. Police in Ghana have arrested more than 100 people, mostly opposition followers or supporters of President-elect John Mahama, over acts of lawlessness. Supporters of the newly elected president who wants jobs have allegedly attacked some state institutions, looted properties, and engaged in disturbances that have left some police and military personnel injured. The irate supporters also touched 2 electoral commission officers due to a delay in announcing the outcome of Saturday's elections and disagreements over some parliamentary results. Mahama has condemned the vandalism and called on President Nana Akufo-Addo and security agencies to act decisively in addressing the violence. The police have warned all individuals and groups engaging in violence, saying they will not tolerate any form of lawlessness. Sudan's military has been accused of carrying out an airstrike on a marketplace in the western region of Darfur, in which more than 100 people were reportedly killed. The emergency lawyers' rights group described the bombing in Kabyabia, the town on Monday, the weekly market day, as a horrific massacre. Clashes have intensified in different parts of Sudan in recent weeks between the army and its former ally, the paramilitary rapid support forces, that's the RSF. Both sides deny carrying out war crimes during their 19-month power struggle that has caused the world's biggest humanitarian crisis and forced more than 11 million people from their homes. According to emergency lawyers, the airstrike happened as residents from nearby villages came to shop at the town about 180 kilometers west of El Fasher, the only city still under military control in Darfur and which has been under siege since April. Ligi Mangione, the 26-year-old suspect in the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, is resisting extradition to New York, where he faces a murder charge. Now, he appeared in a Pennsylvania courtroom on Tuesday, where he was denied bail. As he entered the courtroom, he yelled at reporters, saying it's completely out of touch and an insult to the intelligence of the American people, its lived experience. He was arrested on Monday at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, after an employee tipped off the police. He was found with multiple fake IDs and a 3D printed gun with a suppressor. Protesters flooded the streets of Sao Paulo on National Human Rights Day, rallying against the controversial amnesty request for those accused of plotting a coup in 2022. The plot aims to prevent the inauguration of President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Now, the detainees, including former President Jair Bolsonaro, face charges for allegedly orchestrating the conspiracy. Bolsonaro, a far-right leader, has consistently denied any involvement, calling the accusation unfounded. The protesters argued that granting amnesty to those involved would undermine democracy and justice. The case has sparked intense debate in Brazil, highlighting deep political divides in the country. Business now. The Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission has clarified its stance on the current tax reforms in Nigeria, refuting claims that it opposes the proposed changes. While recognizing the potential challenges and complexities associated with the reform, the RMAFC has reiterated its dedication to collaborating with the governments to establish a fair and equitable revenue allocation system. In its initial statements, they outlined several legal, constitutional, and also technical considerations regarding the proposed bills. Kenneth Erukeme, partner in tax reporting and strategy at PwC, shared his perspective on this topic during an interview on Business Edge with Perpetua Fasami-Peter.
The challenge with the VAT situation is that, I don't necessarily believe that that constitutional provision requiring them to have an input and take the proposal to the president, for the president to lay it before the National Assembly, is required in the VAT context. And the reason for this is that, the VAT, as it's currently constructed, is not in the exclusive list. It's not in the concurrent, which means that VAT falls in the residual. And that's one of the things that Rivers State was actually challenging. They had actually won at the Federal High Court, gone to the appeal court, and they won, and they were taking it to the Supreme Court to establish that Rivers State should be responsible for administering and collecting.
And now time for sports. The draw for the FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup Africa qualifiers is scheduled for Thursday in Cairo at 2:30 p.m. local time. This follows the draw for the FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup qualifier at 2 p.m. 38 African teams will compete for 4 spots at the 2026 tournament, which will feature 24 nations. The qualifiers will determine the continent's representatives in the global competition. In the 2024 edition in Colombia, Nigeria, Ghana, and Cameroon represented Africa. Nigeria reached the round of 16, while Ghana and Cameroon were eliminated in the group stage. The qualifying series is a critical step for African teams aiming to secure their place on the world stage. Harambee Stars coach Engin Firat has resigned due to unpaid salaries, as confirmed by new FKF President Hussein Mohammed. Firat's departure follows Kenya's failure to qualify for the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations, where they finished third in Group J behind Cameroon and Zimbabwe despite a final 2-1 win over Namibia. The qualifiers were marked by losses to Cameroon and disappointing draws against Zimbabwe and Namibia. Hussein announced his plans to audit the amounts owed to Firat and begin the search for a replacement in consultation with the National Executive Committee. Firat's resignation coincides with leadership changes at FKF as Hussein succeeds Nick Mwendwa and Kenya prepares for the 2025 Africa Nations Championship. FIFA is set to confirm Saudi Arabia as the 2034 World Cup host, and Morocco, Spain, and Portugal with matches in South Africa for the 2030 tournament. Both bids are uncontested and will be formally approved during a virtual FIFA Congress. Saudi Arabia, the sole candidate for 2034, benefited from FIFA's decision to limit bids to Asia and Oceania following the 2026 World Cup in North America. Critics highlight human rights concerns, accusing Saudi Arabia of using sports to improve its image. Logistical challenges include limited infrastructure and extreme summer heat, potentially delaying the tournament. The kingdom's hosting rights raise concerns similar to Qatar 2022, with additional scrutiny expected over Saudi Arabia's rights record. And that's all the news this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of the stories that we brought your way. President Bola Tinubu hosts German President Steinmeier in Abuja. And Senate President Akpabio declares Okpawolo's Senate seat vacant, asks INEC to conduct election. Dozens of Ghana's president-elect supporters arrested in post-poll chaos. Now, to remember, you can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and of course on YouTube. Many thanks for watching. My name is Mazino Appeal.